Yeah, so this relates to the rollout of the broadband, National Broadband Plan. So I have some particular questions that flow from the earlier exchanges, which perhaps I'll make in my supplementary. But just the more general question I wanted to ask is, does the Minister not accept that the whole farce of a process, which is effectively seen a bidder win on the basis of everybody else lose, just drop out of the race, a US venture capitalist, does it not illustrate precisely that the problem with relying on the private market to provide for what is essentially a public utility? And would we not be better at looking at the history of the rollout of, for example, electricity, telecommunications in the past, etc., and the key role of the state in providing what is a vital public service?
Thank you very much, Minister. 2 minutes.
The Government strategy for the National Broadband Plan was devised following a detailed public consultation. The consultation was undertaken against a backdrop of where the telecommunications sector in Ireland operates in a liberalised market that relies on commercial operators investing in the building of infrastructure and offering services to citizens and businesses on a commercial basis. The commercial sector acting alone, however, has failed to bring high-speed broadband to large parts of Ireland. As a consequence, the Government consulted on and brought forward the National Broadband Plan to address this market failure. Ireland is not alone in facing this challenge. It is a challenge faced by other digitally ambitious EU member states, and a number of these member states are making very significant interventions in the market to ensure the deployment of high-speed broadband connectivity. As the Deputy will be aware, Ireland does not have a state-owned telecommunications company that owns, operates or builds telecoms infrastructure. Accordingly, any intervention by the state in the broadband market must rely on commercial entities. It's worth noting that the previous state-owned telecoms company, Eir, now subcontracts the physical building of infrastructure, as do the majority of major telecommunications operators in this state. The procurement process to appoint a bidder for the state intervention network is now in the final stages. The evaluation of the final tender submission is ongoing and will be allowed the time required. On conclusion of the evaluation, my department will make a recommendation to me on whether to appoint the bidder as a preferred bidder, and I'll bring that matter to government for decision.
Thank you very much, Deputy Murphy. You have 1 minute.
Thanks. I want to just follow up on some of the particulars of from the exchange earlier in relation to relations with Mr. McCourt. Deputy Dooley asked a question which potentially posed a new piece of information in terms of this controversy, which is the question of a lunch in Leinster House on the 18th of April, and the Minister answered simply that he didn't have lunch with the Minister Mr. McCourt on that day. Were there plans to meet with Mr. McCourt on that day or around that day? Were there plans for the Minister to have lunch with Mr. McCourt around that day? Is there a diary entry referring to a lunch or a meeting with Mr. McCourt in Leinster House on that day or around that day? If there's any other information that the Minister can provide in relation to that. Secondly, just a more general question, because the Minister made a general statement kind of defending his rights to meet with those involved in telecommunications, a small number of people, etc. But does the Minister not accept the very basics, that from the point of view of doing things correctly and being seen to do things correctly, that it's incorrect to meet bidders during an ongoing bidding process?
Thank you very much.
It's said that this again, that the vast majority of telcos in this country have had some role in this procurement process at some stage throughout it. And what it's been alleged here that I should have done is effectively it was the Minister for Agriculture that I wouldn't meet with the farm organisations from the day of my appointment until next month or the month after that, when this process is finalised. There's a lot of work that needs to be done in the whole telecommunications area. One of the single biggest issues that we had as public representatives going around the country was the issue of broadband coverage. The second biggest issue was the issue of mobile phone coverage. Quite a number of the people that are involved in mobile phone networks in this country were also involved in this process. And I took a decision during the negotiations on the programme for government, I didn't know whether I was going to be in this role or any role at that stage, was that we should establish a mobile phone and broadband task force to try and unlock many of the bottlenecks that are there within the system. And that's what we've done, and Minister Kine and myself have been very successful in addressing mobile phone black spots, wireless deployment, mobile broadband, and getting access to state ducting and infrastructure.
We will have a 5 minutes. Deputy, and then Deputy Murphy, and then you want a short, if we have a few seconds.
Okay, Minister, I'm going to go again on the first question, and it's the only question I'm going to ask to avoid any possibility of answering another question. Were you due to meet with Mr McCourt in Leinster House on the 18th of April or around the 18th of April? Would there be a diary entry to that effect about a lunch or a meeting with Mr McCourt in Leinster House on the 18th of April or around the 18th of April? And if that is the case, what was going to be the nature of the meeting? What was the meeting going to be about, and who was going to attend? Was it going to be anyone from the department attending?
Thank you, Deputy. Deputy Dooley wants a quick.
Yeah, Minister, it's really the same question. On the 18th of April, your diary shows an entry to have lunch with David McCourt in Leinster House. I can confirm to you that David McCourt did have lunch in Leinster House on that day. Whether or not you joined him is a matter for you to clarify to this House. I want to know what the purpose of that meeting, why you arranged the meeting. Was it your intention to have officials present? What was the expected outcome from Mr McCourt's perspective? And why in God's name did you allow yourself to be embroiled yet again on the very day that you were explaining to this House why you had inappropriately involved yourself in the Celtic media controversy?
Minister, 1 minute.
No, I did not attend the lunch, is the first thing. The second thing is that my understanding is that Mr McCourt and his family came in for lunch that day to celebrate a birthday. And they had been in Dublin. That was the reason for that particular lunch. But I didn't attend it.